He chose something amber. I noticed that before anything else. The way the light from the glass and held there. Warm and deliberate. He said he'd been looking up recipes all week. Said it like a confession, like effort. Something more than it usually did between us. Anniversaries deserve intention, he told me. It sounded right. Not natural exactly, but close enough that I let it pass. I smiled, accepted the glass. Even leaned in to kiss his cheek. The gesture surprised him, just slightly. I felt it in the way he stilled, then resumed. We had become people who noticed pauses. I'll take a photo, I said, lifting the glass. The light's better outside. He nodded too quickly. Go on. That was the first small misalignment. Not enough to name. Just enough to feel. The balcony door slid open with its usual reluctant sound. Outside. The evening had settled into that quiet hour where everything looks softened, forgiven. I held the drink up, turning it slightly. The liquid clung to the sides in slow, even lines. It was probably nothing. I was about to take the photo when I heard his voice again, muffled but close. He hadn't moved far from the door. Are you sure it's untraceable? Silence followed. Not long. Then a second voice, faint through the phone. I couldn't make out the words, only the cadence, reassuring, practiced. I didn't freeze, that would have required shock. What I felt was more like adjustment. As if something inside me had been waiting for a shape, and had finally found it. I stepped back from the railing, careful not to let the glass touch anything. The amber surface trembled slightly, then stilled. Inside, he was still facing away, one hand braced against the counter. His posture had none of the tenderness from moments ago. It was efficient. Focused. I moved quietly, not hiding, not rushing. The kind of movement that doesn't attract attention, because it assumes it belongs. The glasses were still on the counter, his untouched. Mine now resting where I placed it. I made the exchange with a steadiness I didn't question. It didn't feel like a decision so much as a correction. When I stepped back onto the balcony, I lifted the other glass, held it to the light again. It looked the same. Of course it did. I took the photo this time. Even smiled into it, though I wasn't sure for whom. When I returned, he had ended the call. He turned toward me with a softness that now felt assembled rather than felt. Well? He asked. Worth documenting. It is. I said and handed him the glass. He accepted it without hesitation. That, more than anything, confirmed the shift. No second glance. No instinct to check. Trust, but only in one direction. We sat together. The conversation moved along familiar lines. Safe topics. Shared references, the kind of dialogue that fills space without risking anything real. I listened more than I spoke. I watched him. There's a moment before something takes hold. Where the body knows before the mind admits it. A slight tightening at the jaw. A pause in the rhythm of breathing. He tried to smooth over it, took another sip too quickly. Too strong? I asked. He shook his head. No. Just different than I expected. I nodded, as if that made sense. The glass lowered. His hand lingered on the table. Fingers pressing briefly into the surface. Then again, harder this time. The performance of normalcy began to fracture in small, uncoordinated ways. I didn't move toward him, maybe sit back. I said, my voice even. You look a little off. He looked at me then, really looked. Something searching. Something uncertain. Not recognition. Not yet. The chair scraped as he shifted. The sound carried farther than it should have. Somewhere nearby, a door opened. Voices, distant but approaching. It happened quickly after that. Not dramatically. Just inevitably. The glass tipped, rolled. Spilled what remained across the table. His breath came shallow, uneven. I stood only when it became necessary. When the situation had already escaped the boundaries of us. The neighbor's knock was sharp, insistent. Someone had called for help. By the time the paramedics arrived, the evening had lost all of its softness. Light flooded the room, clinical and unambiguous. Questions followed, directed. Repeated. What happened? I answered what I could. We were having a drink. Did he take anything else? Not that I know of. Did you prepare the drinks? A pause. Not long. He did, I said. They wrote it down. Of course they did. I stayed out of the way as they worked. Watching the room rearrange itself around the new reality. The glasses. The spill. the careful hands moving with practiced urgency. He was still conscious when they lifted him. His gaze found me once more, but whatever he was trying to understand came too late, or not at all. I didn't follow immediately. I let the space settle, let the silence return in pieces. On the table, the photograph remained open on my phone. The amber glow. The illusion of warmth. It looked convincing even now. I closed it without saving. Later, there would be more questions. Perhaps investigations. Explanations that would try to impose order on what had happened. But something had already resolved, quietly and without ceremony. Not justice. Not even relief. Just the absence of assumption. And that, I understood, would remain long after everything else found its conclusion, or didn't.